I'd just like to remind us again about how big God is. One of the reasons why people struggle with the idea of God is because their idea of him is too small. Having reduced God in size, he then becomes something that he's not. And having become something that he's not, he can become something that can be safely discarded. God's nature isn't changed by how many people believe in him any more than my existence is changed by how many people know I exist. God's nature is not changed by what we think his nature is or what we'd like it to be. Nor do God's ways or thoughts become altered because we choose them to be. This makes God highly inconvenient for all of us. The reason God becomes highly inconvenient for all of us is quite simply because none of us are perfectly aligned with God. So what we have to do is to deal with the reality of that misalignment. Another way of putting this is in Romans chapter 3:23, where it simply says, there is no difference, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. In other words, the measurement of the glory of God is something that we can't measure up to. We're misaligned with God. What do we do with our misalignment with God? Well, one way of dealing with it is basically to say God is in the wrong place. God should be aligned with me, or with my society, with my way of thinking. So the misalignment is not with me at all, but with God. And if God is misaligned, then he should not exist. God is wrong. Or God should not be, therefore he will not be. We do not want that God. Some people, of course, can go and choose a different God. They'll actually say, well, I do sense something spiritual. I consider myself to be religious or spiritual. Therefore, I'll choose something which fits me, which I'm prepared to align myself with, or is better aligned with the sort of person that I think I am. And they move away from who God actually is, because he's not suitable or fitting for us. It doesn't change who God is. It simply means that we have approved of our own misalignment and moved in a different direction. Now, that doesn't, of course, get us closer to God, and it doesn't disprove God in any way at all. Our tendency to sit in judgment over God, of course, is something that anyone who was opposing God would certainly want to encourage. And in the spiritual interpretation of things, the ultimate being that wants to oppose God is known as Satan or the devil. But that, again, is something that we do not want to know. We would not want to think of ourselves as ever aligning ourselves with evil. At least most of us. Some of us don't mind doing that in the context of leisure. And a few people, of course, really are Satanists. But what we want to think of is that we are the good guys. Most of us, most of the time, want to think of ourselves that way. Or if we want to think of ourselves in some sense wicked, it's not a bad wicked, if that makes sense. But we do want to think of ourselves as the ones who decide and not God. And it's that part of our nature, that independence, or that choosing to submit in a wrong direction because it suits us, that choosing of a lifestyle, that adopting of something that we think is true to ourselves above everything else, or a sacrifice that we are choosing to make because we really feel it's the thing for us to do. All of that is something that we've built up and reinforced in our own justifications and in the justifications of our society and of our age. It doesn't change who God is. It doesn't change what he wants from us. In fact, this is a God who says, look, the nations are no more than a drop in a bucket or a bowl, just a little drip from a tap. They're not this big thing. And if the nations aren't that big, well then, what does that make us? One of the things about the vaccine is that it's a very much an equalizer. We're one of billions of people who all get exactly the same thing. COVID-19 is not an illness that respects income. It has certain negative effects in certain places more than others. But it reminds us of our equal entitlement to mortality, our own fallibility, our own limitations. And when you look upon the great field of history, almost nobody is remembered. Our grave monuments crumble away, and the words cannot be read. The records cease, and we fade completely from memory. But the word of our God stands forever, and the God behind it is eternal. How great is our God? Greater and wiser and more complete than anything that we could ever know or be. Not because I've decided it, not because anyone has decided it, but because that is what he is. And so for us, his name, the ultimate name of God that he gave to Abraham and to Moses, is I am. Not I was, or I might be, or I'll be what you like. I am. I am raised up the prophets, the apostles, the church. I am is calling us now to be his followers, to be his people. The ultimate power in the universe actually wants us as his friends.